Imagine getting into a shuttle, expecting a routine ride home, but instead finding yourself with a driver who talks to spirits and shares visions of killings. That's what happened to Donna Winger. Little did she know, this unsettling encounter would spiral into a chilling series of events, revealing dark secrets and a twisted story of murder. Stay with us as we unravel the shocking story of Mark and Donna Winger, a seemingly perfect couple whose lives were shattered by deception and betrayal. This video contains descriptions of violent acts, including murder and dismemberment, which may be distressing to some viewers. Please proceed with caution. Also, this video is intended for educational and informational purposes only. The content discussed is based on publicly available information and is not intended to sensationalize or exploit the events described. So with that said, let's start with the case. Mark and Donna Winger seem to have it all. They have good jobs, a nice home, and a loving marriage. But there was one thing missing from their lives: a child. They tried for 6 years to have a baby, only to find out that Donna couldn't get pregnant. It was a devastating blow, especially for Donna, who had always dreamt of being a mother. Let's talk about these couples and how they met. Donna Brown was born in Hollywood, Florida on November 10, 1963. She grew up in a tight-knit Jewish family with her parents, Sarah Jane and Robert Cash Brown, and her two younger sisters, Jenny and Michelle. Donna was always close to her family and had a strong desire to have children of her own someday. She was known for her kind, outgoing nature and had a way of making everyone around her feel comfortable and happy. Donna was working as an operating room technician when she was 24. Back then, blind dates were still popular, and one day, her co-worker Greg Winger suggested setting her up with his brother, Mark. Greg spoke highly of Mark, who had just returned from serving a year in Korea as a lieutenant. Donna agreed to the blind date, curious to meet this man her co-worker praised so much. Mark Harlan Winger was born on November 22, 1962 in Elyria, Ohio. He came from a Jewish family with his parents, Jared and Sally Winger, and two older siblings. Mark was ambitious and bright, earning a bachelor's degree in physics from Virginia Military Institute. He aspired to become a nuclear engineer for a laboratory manufacturing company by the time he met Donna. When Donna and Mark met for their blind date, there was an instant connection. Donna's vibrant and outgoing personality complemented Mark's quiet and reserved demeanor. Despite his calm exterior, Mark had a sense of humor that made Donna laugh. They quickly hit it off, and it wasn't long before they began dating seriously. Donna's family liked Mark from the start. He seemed like the perfect match for her, and they were always seen holding hands or sitting close together. Donna's energy and enthusiasm were balanced by Mark's calm and steady presence. Their relationship progressed smoothly, and within 6 months, Mark proposed to Donna in June 1988. She happily accepted, and their families were overjoyed. They announced their engagement in the New York Times, and the following year, on March 4, 1989, Donna and Mark got married. Shortly after their wedding, Mark received a job offer in Springfield, Illinois, and the couple relocated there. Donna found a job assisting a plastic surgeon at Memorial Medical Center. Springfield was an ideal place for the Wingers to start their family. They were well liked and respected in their neighborhood and community. By all accounts, Mark and Donna seemed like the perfect couple. They had good jobs, a nice home, and were deeply in love. The only thing missing from their lives was a child. Despite this heartbreaking news, Mark and Donna didn't give up on their dream of having family. One day, while Donna was at work, a doctor mentioned that a teenage mother was looking to give her baby up for adoption. It felt like fate. On June 1st, 1995, they adopted a beautiful baby girl and named her Bailey Elizabeth Winger. Donna was over the moon. She felt an instant bond with Bailey and showered her with all the love she had. Mark and Donna were finally a family, and their home was filled with joy and laughter. Friends and family could see how happy Donna was. She often said that becoming a mother was the best thing that had ever happened to her. Everything seemed perfect. They had their baby and life was good. Donna took Bailey to visit her family in Florida for a week while Mark was on a business trip in Tennessee. When Donna arrived, she was picked up by a shuttle from the airport. This ride, however, was anything but ordinary. The shuttle ride that was supposed to be a simple journey home turned into a nightmare for Donna. The driver, Roger Harrington, made her feel extremely uncomfortable. He talked about speaking to a godlike spirit and having visions of killings. He even flirted with her, making inappropriate comments about liking older women. To make matters worse, he drove erratically and over the speed limit. Donna was terrified and just wanted to get home safely. When she finally got home, she told Mark about the scary ride. Mark was very concerned and told Donna to write down everything that had happened, including what the driver said and how he behaved. They even received strange calls at their home in the days following the incident, with the caller just breathing and hanging up. Mark was convinced it was the shuttle driver and filed a complaint with the company, Bart Transport, which led to Roger being suspended. 6 days after that frightening shuttle ride, something terrible happened. Mark was working out on the treadmill in the basement when he heard a loud crash. Worried that Donna might have fallen or that something had happened to Bailey, he rushed upstairs. He found Bailey lying on the bed in the master bedroom. But then, he heard screams from elsewhere in the house. Grabbing his gun, Mark ran down the hallway and found his wife being attacked by a man with a hammer. Mark shot the intruder, who turned out to be Roger Harrington, the same shuttle driver who had harassed Donna. Mark called 911 in a panic, desperate for help. Both Donna and Roger were severely injured, and despite Mark's efforts, neither survived. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with us so far. We are a new channel and your support means everything to us. So please help us grow by clicking the subscribe button, leaving a comment, liking and sharing our videos. Now let's get back to the case. When the police arrived, they found Donna face down on the floor and Roger lying on his back. The scene was chaotic and Mark was in shock. He told the police that he had shot Roger to protect Donna, explaining that the hammer Roger used in the attack belonged to them and had been left out as a reminder to anger Hartrack. The police began questioning Mark to piece together what had happened. During the questioning, Mark asked who the attacker was, and when he learned it was Roger Harrington, he connected it to the harassment incident from a week earlier. He told the detectives about the complaint he had filed and how Roger had been calling and harassing them. Initially, Mark was seen as a hero for defending his wife from a dangerous attacker. The case was quickly closed, with Donna's death listed as a murder by Harrington and Harrington's death as a justified homicide. Friends and family rallied around Mark, trying to support him and help him care for baby Bailey. Donna's mother and sister took turns traveling to Springfield to assist Mark. However, they noticed something strange about Mark's behavior. He was drinking excessively and watching violent movies, which seemed odd given the trauma he had just experienced. But they didn't want to judge him. They thought he was just grieving in his own way. After a few months, Donna's family suggested that Mark hire a nanny to help with Bailey, as they couldn't keep traveling back and forth. Mark agreed, and he hired Rebecca Simi, a sweet and caring young woman who quickly bonded with Bailey and the whole family. As time went on, Mark's behavior continued to raise eyebrows. He seemed to move on from Donna's death rather quickly, and less than a year after hiring Rebecca, he announced that she was pregnant. This was surprising because Mark had previously told her he couldn't have children. They began planning their future together, and Mark even started attending church with Rebecca, saying he would switch his faith to Christianity. Donna's family was hurt and confused by how quickly Mark seemed to replace Donna. They also noticed that Mark started to distance Bailey from them, which was heartbreaking for Donna's mother and sister. Despite these concerns, they tried to remain supportive. But the strange behavior didn't stop there. Mark filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Bart's Transport and Harrington's estate, claiming they were negligent in hiring a dangerous driver. This move seemed excessive and drew even more attention to Mark's actions. Thus begins the unraveling of the seemingly perfect life that Mark and Donna had built, with friends and family starting to question everything they thought they knew about Mark Winger. After Donna's tragic death, our friends and family couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about Mark. They also noticed how Mark began to distance himself and Bailey from them. He didn't want Bailey to call her grandmother grandma anymore, which was deeply hurtful to Donna's mother. These actions made the family even more uneasy. The real twist in the story came when Diane Schultz, Donna's best friend, came forward with a shocking confession. She revealed that she had been having an affair with Mark before Donna's death, and that Mark had talked about wanting Donna dead. This revelation turned everything upside down. Diane confessed to the police that the affair had started a month before Donna's murder and continued for 6 months afterwards. Mark had even bought them wedding rings, planning for a future together. He had told Diane it would be easier if Donna were dead, and Diane, fragged with guilt, finally decided to tell the truth. Diane's confession gave the detectives new leads to follow. They checked phone records and found that Mark and Diane had been in constant contact, talking for hundreds of minutes. They also discovered that Diane had called Mark at the ER, trying to get him to admit to the murders, but he had claimed he was forgiven by Jesus Christ and threatened her to keep quiet. With Diane's testimony, the detectives decided to reopen the case. They revisited the original investigation findings and discovered critical evidence that had been overlooked. The most significant pieces were 3 Polaroid photos taken by the first officer on the scene before the paramedics arrived. These photos showed the positions of Donna's and Roger's bodies, which didn't match Mark's account of what happened. The blood spatter evidence and the positions of the bodies indicated that Roger Harrington had not attacked Donna, as Mark had claimed. Instead, it appeared that Mark had staged the scene to make it look like Roger was the attacker. As the detectives dug deeper, they found more inconsistencies in Mark's story. Roger's coffee mug and cigarettes on the kitchen table didn't make sense for a planned attack. The note in Roger's car with Mark's name and address and the time 4:30 suggested a meeting, not a random attack. And the blood evidence and spent shell casings didn't align with Mark's description of the shooting. The detectives realized that Mark had likely lured Roger to his home under false pretenses, forced him to his knees, and shot him. Hearing the shots, Donna had rushed to the room, and Mark had then beaten her to death with a hammer. He had staged the scene to frame Roger for the murder, even calling 911 mid-attack to solidify his alibi. With all this new evidence, the police arrested Mark Winger on August 23, 2001 at his job. He was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and held on a $10 million bail. The man who had once been hailed as a hero was now seen as a cold-hearted murderer. During the trial, the prosecution presented a compelling case showing how Mark had meticulously planned and executed the murders, framing Roger Harrington to cover his tracks. Diane's testimony and the forensic evidence were damning. After 3 weeks of testimony and 13 hours of deliberation, the jury found Mark Winger guilty on May 29, 2002. Mark was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Roger Harrington was posthumously vindicated, and his family finally had some peace knowing the truth. Donna's family was devastated, but relieved that justice had been served. This case highlights the terrifying reality of domestic violence and betrayal. Mark Winger, who seemed like a loving husband and father, harbored dark, murderous intentions. His actions devastated 2 families and shocked everyone who thought they knew him. Domestic violence often hides behind closed doors, and the people who seem the most trustworthy can sometimes be the most dangerous. This case serves as a reminder to always be vigilant and to support those who might be suffering in silence. In the end, justice was served, but the scars left by Mark Winger's actions will never fully heal. The story of Mark and Donna Winger is a chilling example of how appearances can be deceiving and how evil can lurk in the most unexpected places. So, what are your thoughts on the Mark Winger case? Do you think justice was served? How do you feel about Diane Schultz, Donna's best friend? Do you think she was complicit in the killings? Was the decision to report Mark influenced by genuine remorse, or was it because Mark married Rebecca instead of her? possibly straying from their alleged plan. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights and opinions are important to this channel. So if you're interested in more videos like this, click on the next video popping up on the screen. And that's it on today's video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next upload.